Peace, everyone. So, I'm just going to speak from the heart today because when I speak from the head, I hold myself back, I restrain, and I'm worried about certain things. So, I'm just going to speak from the heart. So, focusing on yourself and focusing on the areas of your life that deserve more of your attention can be really supportive to you, but more importantly, your inner peace and your view of the world. Focusing on yourself and establishing discipline within your own life, or maybe having more fun, whatever it is that you're being called to do, is the foundation of creating more peace in your life. I was someone who, especially upon starting my social media that was um, geared towards activism or starting to organize more in community, I always thought that my inner peace would come from some kind of balance in the world or some kind of just ceasefire in a shift in the world, in the outer world, in the systems that exist, and everything of the sort. And upon realizing that all of that is out of my control, and that perhaps I personally was not incarnated to directly engage in the dismantling of those systems, let me rephrase that by saying directly, I'll keep that as it is, because I believe an element of dismantling is getting back to joy or connecting, staying connected. And staying connected means staying connected to one's self and one's family, whether it be chosen family, community, or their blood family. And once I realized and accepted that I can't change the world, or that I can change the microcosm, my close knit world, I can change my world in terms of not the things that are happening outside of me, but more so the experience I have within myself, the love I have for myself, the compassion I have for myself, but also the perspective and the view that I choose to have of others, choosing to view others from a place of compassion and a place of wisdom that is beyond human, like relying upon divine wisdom and ancestral wisdom. And so divine wisdom, I'm speaking more in terms of the Most High, God, Spirit, I say God, or the Lord, or, that kind of wisdom, divine wisdom. And then there's also ancestral wisdom, which to me is the wisdom that allowed our ancestors to survive and carry on our bloodline to this point. Like if you are watching this video, your bloodline has continued to this point. And the wisdom that they relied upon to navigate in their daily lives and imagine us, imagine beyond. And personally, connecting with my own ancestors gave me a lot of insight on my individual purpose here, because as a result of all of the things happening in the world, and maybe even a result of things happening in my family, that patterns that I did not like or patterns that I did not understand, I realized that they were out of my control. And yet the one thing that isn't necessarily in my control, but the one thing I can be empowered in, is the way that I live my own life and fulfilling my own purpose here. And I was afraid of my purpose. I was intimidated by it upon learning what it was. And yet I'm realizing that the practice is aligned with the purpose, meaning that I'm gaining skills along the way that are all a part of the reason that I'm here. And so that question I would have a lot out of genuine curiosity of like, what am I here to do and why am I here? And as many times as that question can be answered, it's up to me to pick up the call and follow my heart. And before following my heart, before I trusted myself enough to follow my heart, I asked for support, divine support, in in what I see. I asked for both. I asked for wisdom, and I picked up the call to receive this wisdom in whichever way it was available to me, and allowing more opportunities for wisdom to come into my life, which really started with me being more tolerant and more accepting of other worldviews that were different from the way that I had already seen the world. And I was willing to accept different worldviews because of the point that I had gotten to, where I essentially felt as though perhaps the way that I'm doing things is not working. Perhaps there's a better way, because I believe that there is joy for me to experience here. There is purpose in the things that I do that I am not feeling as a result of the things I'm doing now. And not only continuing to listen to that intuition, but just picking up that call and going in the direction that I know is aligned with my purpose, and walking by faith, not by sight, and allowing my heart to lead the way. But first, asking for my heart to be balanced so that my desires reflect, wisdom, and they reflect my highest self. They reflect my purpose and not other desires that have nothing to do with me, other pursuits that have nothing to do with me. And upon healing, a lot of pain that I experienced, I was able to follow my heart a lot better. And as a result of letting more love into my life, I was able to learn to love myself for who I am and accept who I am. And upon accepting who I am and really loving myself and understanding my purpose and becoming empowered by my purpose, but loving my family also, and really seeking to better understand them, but more importantly, taking opportunities to understand myself as a part of this family, and just how my value in terms of this bloodline and what I have to offer here. And that took a lot of inner growth, but rather, yes, it took a lot of inner growth, because it required me to, seek support, going to therapy for certain things, engaging in, receiving spiritual teaching, sitting by my elders and really listening to them, their lived experience, and the wisdom that they have to share with me, and being willing to receive that wisdom. But also just developing my relationship with God internally, because a part of the pain that I realized I experienced as a young child, being in a Southern Baptist church, was that there was one individual, one person, and I really don't think that there was malice on his heart when he said this. And yet my perspective for so many years was that, he meant this with ill intent. But just feeling as though God didn't love me as I am, that I was not lovable as I am, that this person would have to be different in order to receive God's love, in order to receive anyone's love. And upon developing my individual relationship with God, trusting my intuition, spending time in silence, just literally following my own heart and reading certain texts, listening to certain spiritual teachers, and listening for what resonates with me, what resonates with my heart. Because growing up as a young kid in church, I loved singing in church. I loved dancing. I honestly loved everything about church. The only thing that I grew to resent I realized, which this was a result, I only realized this after a lot of inner reflection. The only thing I grew to resent was this idea that God didn't love me as I am, or this idea that there is a division present. This idea that, certain people are lovable and certain people are not. So I was able to gain a better understanding of the tradition. And for me, that meant connecting with God in an individual level, but also connecting with my ancestors and the wisdom from God that they've received and their experience with God, instead of there's a narrative that I used to not only perpetuate but deeply believe in, that our spiritual practices as African American people were a hindrance to us. And honestly, that's just not true. If anything, it depends upon your relationship with God, and you know your interest in doing your work that you're here to do. I really think that it's a balance between knowing God for yourself and doing your work that can really lead to understanding your purpose, but also understanding the role that God, plays in your life. So I was able to heal a lot of that pain and feel very light because of that. And I feel joyous to know that my purpose is unfolding, that I answered the call, that I'm receiving so much of, so much mercy from God. And by that, I mean that because I believe that that's a concept that can be misunderstood. By mercy, I mean the opportunity to understand that I'm imperfect and that I'm human and that I may be a reflection of God, and yet I'm having a human experience. So all of that really is those realizations or those choices to shift my perspective really resulted in a lot of healing in my heart. And now being able to live in my purpose, it feels so wonderful that I pray everyone has the opportunity to do this. And when I pray each day, I pray that everyone has the opportunity to know God for themselves, because I believe that the root of a lot of this pain when it comes to spiritual practice, particularly relating to God, is this idea that, humans said God didn't love me. And that being so discouraging for someone when it comes to developing a relationship with God on their own and getting the opportunity to know God and trust God. And I think that experience is different for each person. And I think that it's a personal journey. And yes, I'm very grateful that you watched to this point. And I was going to say that I'm going to pray for you. And I'll end on this note. I've now become a person who understands the power of prayer and the power of an individual relationship with God. And now that I do understand that, I feel overjoyed and empowered. And it is a feeling that I would wish upon my worst enemy. And that's why I pray for others, that they know God this way, or if they know God in the way that is, meant for them, and that they live their purpose, that they are able to walk in faith and do their work and know God. So I pray that is the case for you. And I thank you for watching. Peace.